Welcome to Keeping It Entrepreneurial, the podcast where we unravel the tales of launching, scaling, and savoring success with your host, the king of B&B, Heath Green, and the property prince, Josh Shepler. Come along as we share our experience launching and scaling a seven-figure property management business that we built and sold, along with candid conversations with remarkable entrepreneurs who've mastered the art of business and have an unbridled spirit for entrepreneurship. Get ready to ignite your entrepreneurial soul and fuel your passion. This is where we celebrate the hustle, innovation, sacrifice, and struggle of building a life worth living. This is Keeping It Entrepreneurial.
Episode 3, for those that have always wanted to start a podcast that haven't and have talked about doing it for 5 years, what advice would you give them right now? We're recording our third episode, and feel like you guys are have all the credibility now to give advice on what you've learned from recording 3 episodes in a row. On a scale of 1 to 10, how sleepy are you?
I'm like a 2, but I've chugged like 3 things of Stanley water so far.
I think the fact that I'm looking back over my life, it's making me tired of all the work I've put in over the years. So, I think to your question, and I'm going to bring Alex Hermosi up because he said something the other day that I was listening to about now having the credibility. And I feel like having the credibility of being able to share our story, bring other stories that are similar, is that confidence without evidence is simply delusion. And
say that one more time, slow.
Confidence. No, I'm just kidding. You can slow it down. Confidence without evidence is delusion. And that hit me like a brick wall because I've been trying to place all of these things together. And there's no judgment on everybody doing a podcast and everybody thinking they're a thought leader. But I think the point of that is you need to be careful if you're on the come up or you're on a journey of who you're following and why. Because so many people have advice, but you need to understand if they have the evidence to support that advice or if it's just an opinion. Because for me, I've always followed people that have had the evidence. And I think if in the moment you want to go ask somebody how they made millions of dollars, you're not going to go to a teacher. And I mean this in the best way. Let's say your teacher is teaching you how to make $1 million. Would you go to a teacher or would you go to Warren Buffett? You would go to Warren Buffett, someone who has the evidence to support it. And so for me, all these years, I've just felt like I've not had the credibility yet. And still, there's so much more to learn. There's so much more to grow. But sitting here today, I think that we have so much to share that can be beneficial to so many different people that are on some journey. And to share the stories from people that we know that have built things that can tell you, again, you can start over at 30. You can start over at 45. It only takes 5 years to be an expert. And one of my favorite books is 5 years from now. I think it's the book. We can link it here in one of the episodes, but it's literally, I give it as gifts to so many different people because it shows all of these different people that have started over or started businesses, started billion-dollar businesses, and they have acquired that in 5 years. So it does not take 50 years. It doesn't take lifetimes to build things. You just have to start. But I think credibility is a big piece of what stopped us from launching this for so many years. And to me, it showed up as a distraction. Mm-hmm. And right now in my life, I feel like I'm positioned where I can be distracted or not necessarily be distracted, but this is my focus.
It's a new avenue. It's a new medium that is encompassed in our life that's going to help take us to that next chapter. And I couldn't agree more with what you said. And I think there's 2 other things that I would kind of add on that is, one, you have to pay for proximity. And there's so much that is free in today's world, but something that we have always focused on is education and making sure we were putting ourselves in rooms where it aligned with our goals, but would take us to that next level.
Yeah.
And I even look at it too, like when I go back to like when I was in college and trying to figure out who I was, like there were so many times I did jobs for free. And we talk about this all the time, and like, especially trying to hire new talent. I wasn't afraid to do something for free because I knew it was going to give me advice, knowledge, or inner room that I needed to be in to set me up for my next success. And I think too, the other thing is don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Maybe a podcast isn't for you, maybe X, Y, and Z isn't for you, but like do things that do scare you, whether that's video or content or, paying for education or whatever that might be. You have to have the credibility to be able to teach.
Yeah. And there's so many people relaunching things and redoing and that are listening now that are wanting to start a business or starting over a business. And Daniel Floyd says it best. He said, embrace the fact that you may get it wrong. And I think that holds so many people back that they're just, again, avoiding having to make mistakes.
Yeah. And I think too, a lot of people think that it's, success is tied to wealth, or, a podcast is going to create this wealth for you. And, wealth is a product of a life well lived. And I think you have to go through all of these experiences in life to create wealth in a multitude of different ways. It's not just your bank account. It's a wealth of relationships. It's a wealth of knowledge. It's a wealth in so many different things. And that's a true life worth living.
What's the biggest difference? There's probably a lot, but what's like one thing that's, because of acquiring wealth over the last 7 years since launching it, in what ways did you not expect it to like make life better? Obviously you can like, I can go do this or that. And you mentioned like paying for proximity was something that like building wealth can do. But like, is there something where it's given you the ability to do something that you weren't even expecting?
That's a great question. And it's so interesting because still sitting here today,
I already know what you're going to say.
It's talking about money and talking about wealth makes me so uncomfortable, only because that is something that I've been overcoming my whole life, is that I think it puts a spotlight on people that you think you're better than everybody else. And so I've been intending and working on getting better about not being afraid to tell people that you have money and that it's a bad thing that you do. And because for me, I think it singles out people and it makes people not feel a part of something. But at the same time, it takes away from what you've accomplished. And it's just a constant struggle. So asking that question, it makes me super uncomfortable, but I'm super excited to also answer that, because again, when you have a different relationship around money, then you truly see that it's not just so you can go out and buy a brand new car. Because personally, for me, it's never been about materialistic things ever. I literally probably would still be driving my Toyota 4Runner if it had not gotten stolen after a trip from Chicago.
So when I met Josh,
I know exactly what you're going to say.
And,
oh my God.
And when I moved in with Josh, Josh still had a big box TV in his bedroom. Here is this guy that, it was polished. We talked about this earlier. Like, he dressed to the nines, very good looking, very smart.
Tell me more.
Captivating.
Carry on.
Drove a Mercedes. And I just remember going to his house for the very first time. And like, I'm like walking around and I'm like, I'm not judging. And there was nothing wrong with your house.
It feels like judgment to me. It's showing up as judgment.
None of those things meant anything to him.
That's what I've wondered. Yeah.
And for me,
Well, you even just said Mercedes. And I will literally tell you, the last car that I wanted to buy after my Toyota 4Runner was stolen was a Mercedes. Because everybody that I knew that drove a Mercedes wanted you to know that they drove a Mercedes. And guess what? I found myself in a Mercedes dealership car lot. And I was like, you're not going to buy a Mercedes because like, this is not who you are. Well, not only did I buy a Mercedes, I bought a Mercedes with no voice. I had laryngitis and had no voice and had to negotiate the deal with no voice. I still remember that. And so still driving that car, I mean, in transparency, like made me feel better than, which I never wanted. Again, that was a discomfort for me. And because then it just took me away from like where I wanted to be. And I guess probably thinking inward, I had always had to be in front of, or people needed to guess who I was or put a label on me or identify. So I did not want to put labels on things to myself to become a target of other people to think I was a certain way. I wanted to almost blend in where they couldn't form an opinion about me. And so that was probably something that I am still continuing to work on, because I don't like things to be representations of who I am. Like, I just like people to get to know me because they want to know me.
Yeah, and just because we might like nice things or want to do nice things, that's not what truly defines us. And I think that's something that we've always been able to relate on too is, both of us can talk about these moments as kids that we knew that there was success in our life and that we were meant to do big things. But for either one of us, it's never been about money. Like it's never been that. Our goals in our business have never been about the financial gain. Selling our company was not about the money. It was about more of what was going to happen to us.
And that's the biggest question that we have gotten from everybody.
Is how much we sold for.
How much did you sell for? What are you going to buy? What did you buy? Oh, you sold, and oh, you bought this because of that. It was never, ever about the money.
And
never.
Not and we're time. Two, it wasn't about the money, and we're still in our business. We're staying on as operators right now. It's one of those things that like, it wasn't just a check for us to sign out on everything. It's still part of our DNA in our life. And it was more for us about our employees, our vision for the industry and our company, our vision for our state, our clients, our residents, like all of those were factors. Money was literally the last thing that we talked about when we signed on the dotted line.
So as somebody on their come up, actually for a friend,
right, you're well on your up.
On the way. What has been the biggest mindset shift though, since having money? And I don't even need specifics, but like, is there a difference in like the way you go about operating business or taking on ventures, or was there like a shift? Or like, let's say you deposited a check and then you woke up the next day. Did you feel anything different?
No. That's a great question, because for me, we've always invested back in our business. Mm-hmm. And even as a property management company, we took 4 to 5 of our team members to every conference. And when we would show up, the business owners would always kind of look at us like, why are you bringing 4 or 5 of your team members and spending this amount of money? But for me, we would always goal ourselves and say, okay, well, you go and you learn one thing and you learn one thing, and we'll all bring them back together, that we could go faster if we were all learning together and taking people that you knew would contribute and get something out of it. But along the way, the money allowed us and opened doors to put us in rooms that we could not get in previously, or go to events that we could not be placed in. So really a mindset shift around money is that it could take us places we didn't think it could take us.
Yeah. I mean, it also gave us experiences in life. I mean, we've been able to give experiences to friends and family, which mean more to us than any materialistic thing, and things that we're looking to continue to do in the future. And I think kind of to your question too is, and this is something I struggle with on the daily, why not me? Like, why can't you succeed? Why can't you go out and do whatever your goal is and achieve it? Why can't I walk into a Fortune 500 company and get them as a property management client? I mean, we're not going to name drop, but we do have some very high profile clients that we manage for. And it's never been something that we've ever been intimidated to walk into those rooms, because we knew our value as a person, as a business owner on the company that we provided, that in the absence of value, it was always about money. But we always brought value, and we never had to negotiate our fees.
Well, and because we walked into that room bringing energy from like who we wanted to be, not who we were. And that's a big part of it. And I think that's what makes people feel very comfortable in those situations is that you're walking in as an equal. And because everybody's had a journey. And if someone treats you differently, then really do you want to be a part of their life anyway? But I think back, one thing that Heath and I have always talked about is like, even from our younger years, growing up, is like our believing. And we knew at some point that we wanted a big life. And I know that there are some people who do not want a big life. And maybe they don't even know that they want it because they've never thought about it. But I knew from a young age, I want a big life. And it's not about the things that are attached to a big life. It's just of part of being ambitious. And I think the believing has to always be the bigger part of your priorities, because the believing is going to push you through all the bullshit we talked about, all those experiences, all those setbacks, all those divorces, all of those hits and all those valleys. The believing is what's going to carry you through every bit of that.
And I mean, I can remember multiple times, probably more from my end than your end, sitting in bed and going, I just want a simple life. Like, we're giving all of our emotion and energy into something. We're building it. We're sacrificing friendships and family time. We're sacrificing our life that we're kind of building, and things that at certain milestones you think at age 26 you have to do this, or at age 28 you're doing this. And, you know, one thing that I can visually remember is friends tell us what we need to hear. Friends tell us what we want to hear. Allies tell us what you need to hear. And I think in our relationship, we've always been allies for one another. And we've always told each other what we need to hear at those moments to kind of reground us, refocus us, and push us forward. It's not that I wanted a simple life. It's I probably needed to change some habits and refocus my goals and kind of look at what I'm doing wrong to make me feel this way. Because stress is inevitable. It's a good thing in doses, but you're going to have to step back and say, why me? Why now?
Yeah. And because it was showing up to you, building a big business has different levels to it and different phases. And the bigger that you get, the more complex it can get. And we, from day one, built the system, sitting at Church Street till 2 a.m. in the morning with 20 properties. We built the systems out to scale our business of where we wanted to go, not where we were at, which still to this day, we're using those same systems, those same checklists that have evolved a little bit. But all of those things were the foundation of our business, because we knew where we were going to go. And we knew that once we started, it would go fast. We just knew it would.
Yeah.
And again, the believing. And we knew that we did not want to slow down, because if you start, one thing you have to realize in business is momentum is hard to get. And the last thing you want to do in momentum stage is take your foot off the gas, because you may not get that momentum ever again. And if you have to stop that momentum and go do checklist and build a foundation of your business, you might not get started back, or it might be 2 years down the road before momentum gets back in.
Yeah. And start setting up your business on whatever business you're in on that 5-10 year goal. Like you just said, I can remember you at Church Street, you were creating systems for 20 properties, but acting like we had 2,000 properties. So yes, things changed over time, evolved, and we had to tweak and edit, but you had a foundation strong enough to support our momentum and our growth that we never had to slow down for those aspects. It was literally just pivoting. And I think that's very important, because some people think, well, I'll get to it when I get to that point in my business. Well, then you're not going to believe you're ever going to hit that point. Yeah. Like, you should start at that point. And I just had an aha too, like the fact that our foundation and success and goals, our foundation in faith and foundation in family, like, and the fact that like we launched this on Church Street, because you keep saying Church Street. And I was like, I've never put that in two to two together. It was a God thing. Like, our foundation in all of this and the belief that we had that it was going to succeed is truly what catapulted us through any noise that ever happened in either one of our personal lives.
Yes, for sure.
What was you said that you were building like systems. What was it like? So this would be more of like a tangible action step for somebody that maybe has 20 properties right now. What was it like what were some of those things that you did that gave you some of the results to go from 20 to 40 and then 40 to 140? What were some of those like oh, I'm really glad we did this. That helped because I heard checklists and I heard I heard hints of details, but I'm curious about what some of those details were.
Yeah. First off, I love working systems. I absolutely despise creating systems. And I had to learn that, and it's still something that I have to tell Josh to this day. That is not my unique ability, is creating systems. I can work the hell out of a system. I can tell you what's right and wrong with it, but I'm not like that foundation layer. I get so overwhelmed and I start putting things pen to paper or like on an Excel spreadsheet, and I have to walk away because I need it to be so perfect. But you're the exact opposite of that.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point in establishing, especially if you're going to start a business, start with the end in mind, not just where you're at. And so when I first started, I knew immediately that I did not like, and my strong suit and my skill set did not evolve around bookkeeping and accounting. That if I had to sit and work with those type of spreadsheets, I'm a spreadsheet person, but just not an accounting and a bookkeeping spreadsheet, that would take away from my energy and be a distraction. I had no interest in learning it either. No interest at all. So the very first hire that I made was in accounting and bookkeeping. And she is still with me today after all these years. She worked in an accounting firm and then joined us after that and has worked full time with us, and then now has went corporate with our new company. But hiring to your strengths and your weaknesses. Hiring to your weaknesses. And then surrounding people with that. And I think for you did not like creating the systems, but you could work a system. So to your point, if you're not a systems person, you have to set the foundation of your business up day one. But you cannot let it slow you down, because a lot of people will sit and prepare or figure things out. You just have to get into action. For me, I'm a very systems driven person. It needs to have a justification of why you do something. And so it only made sense for that to be my first step, is because I needed to have a system and a clear path for everything and a process for every single thing in the company. And still to this day, we have the systems and the same processes of how you do things. And when you have a good system and a process in place, you can go twice as fast. And the day that we started scaling the business and we went from 50 properties to 100 to 250 properties, and we started growing by 25 doors a month, we did not have to slow down. We put it into a system and it worked its way down. We had to adjust who worked the system as we built the team out and added new team members, but the system stayed the same.
And we were able to do that by all repeat and referral business, because our retention rate was so high and still remains high, because one, we created value and just general for our clients. We created relationships with our clients that were unmeasurable to anybody else. We provided so much value, not only from a team standpoint, but how to build wealth for them, with always thinking of them first. And then we kind of looked at it in two. We weren't paying for all this advertising to get business in and then push it right back out, and then creating this cycle. We just created business, and those systems were in place that we were able to continue to add 25 plus doors every single month. Our clients became our advertisers and our cheerleaders. They wanted to buy more because we made real estate entrepreneurship of owning investment properties so easy for them. It wasn't easy, and it's not easy, but we made it appear to be easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that was, we had decided we wanted to grow our business by reputation and organically, which is a decision that you have to make, because if you see a lot of people that they're really ad heavy, or they're doing so much work on the back end, and don't get me wrong, like social media and all of that contributes to everything. But we had made the decision that we were going to have our success tied to networking and our reputation and building an experience. And that is the foundation, and a system we built from the day one is how we were going to create an experience for our investors that would be a property management experience worth sharing. And that is what catapulted us.
Because who we are is what we built.
Yeah.
I mean, our business is truly who we are.
100%. And it really was understanding, for me, a pivotal moment was really understanding leverage. And leverage is systems, tools, and people. And so we had the systems, we had tools, We created an 80-20 sheet that our team members could take the 80-20 principle, and then every day when they got into the office, they would have an 80-20 sheet and be able to identify what's the 20% for their day and what's the 80% of their day. So first thing in the morning, if they identified the 20%, they knew how to feel accomplished for the day. They could identify that immediately versus having to go back and forth all day long. Is this the 20%? Is this an 80%? No, they knew what their 20% was. So at the end of the day, they could say, do I need to do this, delete it, or delegate it every single day? And still to this day, we are all attached to what we call our 80-20 sheets.
And we'll give you guys one at the end of this podcast. I kind of want to talk a little bit more about the 80-20 sheet because I think it's been so impactful and life-changing. We all still use it. We all use it in different ways. Like I'm very much a color code person. All of my ink is blue, and then I put red check marks. I don't slash through anything next to everything. But the importance too is your 20 shouldn't always be the majority of your page. Like this podcast, for instance, was on our 80. You know, like your 20 are the things that are going to, at the end of the day, give you peace of mind and make you feel that you have accomplished something, even if that's only 1 to 3 things. But like what's going to either A, not get you fired, B, not create a fire, and 3, that's going to give you peace of mind that you can walk away and you feel accomplished and you haven't just done all of this outside noise.
Yeah, and really understanding the 80-20, that 80% of your results are going to come from 20% of your activities. And if you think about it, and most people think that you've got to go to work and work 8 hours a day, 48 hours a week. In reality, they probably could work 3 hours a day because they're doing the income producing activities and go home and sleep the rest of the day. Because what you find yourself in an office environment, if you're not careful, you're talking at the printer, you're talking to people in other offices. There's so much time that's spent doing something you shouldn't be doing. So identifying 2 in your day, we call them screamers. And we always say that the squeaky wheel gets the grease, that you walk in. And if you start immediately answering emails and your phone calls, then you're at that point answering somebody else's priorities. You've not set your own priorities for the day. So I always say immediately when I walk into the office, or I've always walked in the office, I say, let me go get centered. And what that means is I need to go get my 80-20 sheet and make sure that I've established and I know what is important in my 20% of the day. Because when the day starts, you've got to know that your 20% are going to get accomplished. Because if not, you leave the office at 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, whenever you want to leave, you're going to feel overwhelmed if you cannot check the box that you've accomplished your 20%.
And you're left like, what did I even do today?
100%.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think too, like you create no time block for yourself. And Josh is much better at this than I am, but like the days that I don't start off with my 80 and 20, my day is controlled by whatever else is going around me. Even if I start an 80-20 at 1 p.m., those last few hours have already been determined by 8 to 1.
Well, just because things scream the loudest does not mean they're the most important. And I think that's where we start trying to prioritize throughout the day, is that these things that come in and show up to us as emergencies or urgent issues are not urgent. They're just urgent to someone else. But if you've established what's urgent and important to you, you can stay on track. They are important, yes, but they're not urgent enough to take you away from what you should be doing.
And I think that's something that's very important that every entrepreneur should do, is that within their business, what are those important items? Like what's going to get me fired, what's going to create a fire, and like what's going to create chaos. And if they're not answering those things, then they're not truly important at that moment. And something that we always did too was that we will always get back to you within 24 business hours. Our clients knew that, our residents knew that,
Setting
our staff knew
expectations.
that. So creating clear expectations. So when those things did come in, they were just noise that we could put to the 80%. We knew we had 24 hours to get them done, but it didn't take us off the focus of what we needed to accomplish that day.
Yeah.
So in property management, I feel like we've been to some places where like I've seen your guys' phones ring like 40 times just during these recordings each. And how does one determine what's urgent versus important? I know you kind of touched on how to determine what's important. I like the will it get me fired or create fires. Mm-hmm. But like what would be an example to somebody that for an entrepreneur of what is
so for me, one of the things is like, does it align with my vision and my values for our business? And reputation's always been one of those things, and customer service has always been one of those things. So there's a fine line with just answering and solving something for a customer, but is it going to create an experience that's not worth sharing? And if it's going to do that, then it's probably important that I put my whatever I'm doing at that point in time to the side and get it handled. So like for the short-term aspect, a guest can't get in, or a guest is having an issue that is with plumbing or a maintenance issue or something to that aspect, or they come in and the property's not to the cleanliness standards that it should be. Something that's going to create an experience that's not worth sharing and leave me a 5-star review. And my team knows that they immediately are to pick up the phone. They message through the platform first, just so there's that documentation, but they pick up the phone to troubleshoot and create an experience worth sharing.
And that's a great question, because in the early days, I was, until Heath came on, until we hired our first front desk, I was the yes person to everything. And so everything was urgent. And so I think you've got to establish what is urgent and build a system around it. There's system, because let's say, for instance, in property management, if a resident calls and says that they have a leaky toilet, it may not be urgent to me because it's not my toilet and I don't need to go use the bathroom, but to the resident, it's urgent. So a system would be how that phone call is taken, how it's documented, and then the expectation around that someone will be out between X time, and then it's handed off to another person who reassures them that they will put the work order in, that it'll be taken care of. So you have to establish what is truly an emergency or an urgent. And then for yourself, if you ask yourself, or if you say yes to something, you have to know that you're saying no to something else. And so is the yes worth it? That's a big question. So if you get distracted and it shows up as an urgent matter, you have to say, if I say yes to this issue, what am I saying no to? I think that's a huge, huge question. And the big one for me, and we put up signs on our doors about distractions, is if somebody walks in your office all day long and says, hey, do you have just a second? Do you have just a second? You're quick to say, of course I've got just a second, because you want to be polite. But those seconds add up to minutes, and then minutes add up to you've wasted 3 hours of the day. And statistics and stats, and somewhere out there it shows, I remember reading multiple times, that on average, a distraction will take you 45 minutes to get back on task. And so is it worth it to be off task for 45 minutes? No. And so I think establishing what is urgent is very, very important, but it's going to help you frame that if you know what your 20% items are.
Yep. And I think too, as you grow and evolve, like you said, you were initially the yes person. You were the only person. Each hire, you created another layer before you became the yes person. And I think that's important as an entrepreneur, is making sure that you are truly delegating tasks off of your plate, that if it comes to you, it is because of an issue, or it is a crisis, or there needs to be something. But you also have to empower your team to be able to feel empowered to control the situation. And then also, I think it's important to, like, even in your personal relationships, your business relationships, your staff, whatever it is to explain what importance is. So if there is an interruption, like, it is truly an emergency. I mean, even like with your spouse, like if you worked from home, like, don't come get me unless these are the things that should be an emergency. Because unfortunately, I would love to have a conversation about this, but you're going to take me away, like you said, 45 minutes to be able to get back on task. My end of the day, I want to stop my workday at 3 instead of 5, so I can spend those extra 2 hours with you.
Yep. And I love you delegate authority, not task, because with task, you develop followers, and with authority, you develop leaders. And I love that. So making sure as a leader that you're delegating the authorities, not just a task. And you have to slow down to speed up when doing that, because we want to, in any moment, just start delegating tasks, but people can't make decisions with tasks. They do with authority. And that's been a big difference for us in recognizing that. And I think all of these things have really contributed to our growth and the speed of our growth. That has truly led us to where we're at, because all of these small things add up when you're growing a business that some people can overlook, but they really will contribute to your growth and your outcome. Even though it might seem minuscule in the moment to say no to something, in the long game, it's paramount. And I think if you can make decisions based on long-term goals, it will align you with where you need to be and not short-term thinking.
Yeah, and to that point too, like living is selfish, leading is abundant. And when you can lead your team, you're going to create an abundant business and an abundant life instead of just living and just reacting to everything. So like empowering them to have the authority to make a decision has been something that truly did catapult us and helped with our success and our scalability, because we were truly able to be the forefront of growing our business while they helped run our business.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Keeping It Entrepreneurial. And be sure to subscribe wherever you heard this podcast so you never miss a future episode. Don't forget to check out the show notes for those actionable items to stay engaged for future episodes and how to stay connected with Josh and Heath. And if you found value in today's episode, leave us a review and please share with others.